I never set out to change the gaming industry. At least, that's what I told myself while coding alone in my cramped Brooklyn apartment at 2:47 a.m., surrounded by cold pizza crusts, energy drink cans, and a head full of ideas way too ambitious for my dwindling bank balance. But my older brother, Darren, never missed a chance to mock my little hobby. "Still making your silly cartoons, Rachel," he'd sneer at every family dinner, straightening the cuffs of his $1,200 dress shirt. "You know we've got a spot at the law firm. Real work, real money." My name is Rachel Vega. 3 years ago, at 38, I walked away from a high-paying, high-pressure job as a machine learning engineer at a major robotics firm to start NovaPixel, a one-woman gaming studio. People thought I'd lost my mind. "You're throwing away your future," Darren shouted during what my parents called an emergency family meeting. "The gaming market is a black hole. You'll be broke by next Christmas." But what none of them knew, what no one knew, was that I wasn't just making games. I was quietly building something that could transform how games are designed in the first place. The seed had been planted years ago, while I was deep in research on adaptive AI systems. I stumbled onto a framework that could let a game observe a player's choices in real time and adjust, not just difficulty, but narrative, tone, even world building. This wasn't just predictive modeling, this was real-time, personality-based evolution. NovaPixel's first mobile games were humble. A match 3 puzzle here, a cute adventure platformer there. But hidden under the surface was an evolving AI system collecting millions of behavioral data points, learning how real people thought, played, got frustrated, and found flow. I worked nights and weekends, keeping my consulting gigs during the day to stay afloat. The early months were brutal. My savings were almost gone. Every time Darren saw me, he had a new jab. "Hey, I checked out your latest release," he snickered one Christmas. "Looks like a Fisher-Price version of Angry Birds. You sure this is your big plan?" I smiled and topped off his wine glass. Let him think I was just another indie dev flailing in a crowded market. Then came Echo Run. On the surface, it looked like a sleek, minimalist, endless runner. But behind the scenes, it was powered by my fully functional, deeply adaptive AI engine, Orion. Echo Run didn't just react. It grew with each user. It learned how each player reacted under pressure, what patterns they repeated, and what types of challenges brought them joy or anxiety. The game built itself around the user's behavior in real time, offering a uniquely personalized journey for each player. Initial downloads were modest, but something strange happened. People wouldn't stop playing. Player retention was off the charts. Game reviewers couldn't explain it. YouTubers made reaction videos. Reddit threads lit up. People felt seen by the game, like it was reading their minds in the best way possible. Then, one day, an email hit my inbox. Subject: Sony Interactive, exploring collaboration. I almost deleted it, assuming it was spam, but something made me open it. Within a week, I was on a video call with their senior development team. They weren't just interested, they were fascinated. "We've never seen user metrics like this," their lead strategist said, flipping through charts that looked more like viral social app stats than game data. "You've cracked something here. We want in." Last month, Sony offered me $100 million to acquire the Orion engine and bring me on as a lead developer for their next-gen titles. Darren called the other day. He didn't bring up the law firm, just asked if I'd seen the feature on IG. "Yeah, I saw it. They're having completely different experiences. It's like each person is playing a unique game." I sat back, arms crossed, quietly watching the Sony team puzzle it out. One of their senior technical directors squinted at the architecture layout on my screen. His jaw dropped a little. "This structure," he muttered, pointing at the branching AI logic. "Wait, this isn't just a game, is it?" I smiled. "No, it's not." The meeting lasted 6 intense hours. By the end, their tone had shifted from polite curiosity to genuine awe. They wanted to schedule a formal presentation for the executive board. But I had one condition. "I want to do it at Lexington Partners," I said casually. There was a pause. "My brother Darren works there. He's always been very curious about my company's progress. I think he'd enjoy seeing where things stand." They agreed, probably thinking I was just being quirky or sentimental. What they didn't know was that I'd been quietly planning this moment for the last 3 years. The day of the presentation, Darren was in rare form, holding court in the sleek, glass-walled boardroom at the heart of their Manhattan office. He'd invited half a dozen of his firm's senior partners to watch his eccentric little sister pitch her phone app to a real company. "Rachel," he said with a smirk, not even trying to hide the sarcasm, "wouldn't a coffee shop have been more your speed for this kind of thing?" A few polite chuckles echoed around the room. I heard the murmurs as I set up my laptop. "Just a courtesy meeting, right? She's still doing mobile games? My niece makes better stuff in Roblox." Then the door opened. Marcus Tanaka, Sony's global head of gaming, walked in with 5 members of his executive team. Darren's smirk evaporated. "Ms. Vega," Marcus said, shaking my hand warmly, "thank you for hosting. I'll admit, it's not often we're the ones being pitched by a company we're considering acquiring." The word acquiring sucked the air out of the room. Darren's face cycled through 3 different shades of disbelief. I connected my laptop to the projector, took a breath, and began. "3 years ago," I said, "I left a stable 6-figure job to pursue something I believed could change gaming forever. Everyone thought I was reckless, naive, maybe even delusional." I glanced at Darren. "But what I've built, what my team of 1 has built, is already redefining the relationship between players and games. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to Echo Run and the Orion Engine." The first slide was simple, a chart showing unheard-of engagement numbers. Echo Run looks like a sleek, minimalist runner. But under the hood, no 2 players are experiencing the same game. Right now, over 2.3 million people are playing, and each one is in a game world being generated in real time by Orion. I flipped to a neural map visualization, thousands of threads representing decisions, reactions, emotions. The screen lit up with color and movement, a symphony of real-time adaptation. "The engine doesn't just tweak difficulty," I explained. "It builds custom narrative arcs, challenge sequences, even alters game mechanics based on how each player thinks and feels." One of Darren's colleagues scoffed. "Sounds like basic dynamic scaling. Every game does that." I smiled. "Let's test that." I pulled up the live developer console. "Anyone want to try it?" Darren leaned back in his chair, arms folded. "I'll play your little hobby project." "Perfect." I handed him a tablet. The rest of the room turned their attention to the wall screens, which displayed Orion's neural feedback in real time. As Darren started playing, the map exploded in activity, nodes branching, reconfiguring, responding to his hesitations, his decisions, even the pace of his swipes. "Notice how it slows slightly," I said, narrating. "It's sensed he's hesitating. Now it's adjusting terrain flow to ease him in, while subtly teaching him optimal patterns." On screen, new obstacles appeared, ones Darren was statistically likely to overcome, but still find challenging. Within 2 minutes, he was fully engaged, brow furrowed, tapping with focus. Then came the moment I was waiting for. I've never seen anything like this," he muttered, eyes still locked on the screen. "Exactly, neither had anyone else. And that's why they were offering me $100 million. The engine has already analyzed Darren's entire playstyle," I explained calmly. "It's mapped his decision-making patterns, risk tolerance, even how he responds to different types of problem-solving." I pointed to the dynamic profile building in the neural map on the projector. "Notice how the puzzles are shifting. See that? It's adjusting to his competitive instincts, prioritizing high stakes, risk-reward logic paths. It's tailoring the experience to how he thinks." One of Sony's technical directors let out a low whistle. "It's literally constructing a custom game for him, in real time, based on his personality." Darren looked up from the tablet, blinking. The smirk he'd worn all day was gone. On his screen, he was solving a challenge that involved merging investment portfolios and maximizing long-term returns. In other words, exactly the kind of financial strategy problem he lived for. This is insane," he muttered. "How did it know?" "Because that's what the Orion engine does," I said. "It doesn't just react, it understands. Every player gets a game tailored precisely to their skills, interests, and mindset. It's not gaming anymore, it's personal. Marcus Tanaka stood. And that, he said, is just the beginning. Rachel, show them the M-series prototype. I nodded and loaded the next demo. The screen transformed into a sprawling fantasy world. Castles, marketplaces, deep forests, and intricate cities, all alive with motion. But what set it apart wasn't the graphics. This is what happens when we expand Orion into a persistent, multiplayer environment, I said. Footage rolled of players interacting with NPCs, non-player characters, that didn't just repeat stock phrases or offer basic quests. These characters responded with emotion, remembered prior interactions, and even changed their personalities over time based on player behavior. The entire world adapts in real time, I explained. Cities evolve based on player choices, economies shift, factions rise and fall, and the NPCs, they're not just scripts. They have relationships, memories, goals, real characters with depth. The room was dead silent. Even Darren, who'd once joked I was designing glorified apps for bored commuters, was watching, wide-eyed as an NPC blacksmith in the demo turned away a player who'd betrayed him in a previous quest. The moment felt unscripted. Was unscripted. We've been quietly testing this technology for over 3 years, I said. The simple mobile games you saw, they were collecting live data, teaching Orion how people think, play, and tell stories. I turned back to the room. Dream Maze was just the beginning. Marcus stepped forward again, opening a sleek black briefcase and pulling out a document folder. When we first saw the engagement data from Dream Maze, we thought it was a fluke. Players weren't just playing, they were forming emotional connections. Retention rates were through the roof. He placed the folder on the table. That's why we're here today. Sony is prepared to offer $100 million to acquire NovaPixel, the Orion engine, and bring Rachel on as head of AI development for our global gaming division. Darren's coffee cup slipped and clattered against his saucer. $100 million, he said, his voice hollow. Marcus raised a brow. Actually, after seeing the M-series prototype, we've updated the offer. He slid a new document across the table. I glanced at the number and felt my breath catch. $250 million, plus 5% of all future revenue from any title using Orion. Darren snatched the paper like he couldn't believe it was real. His hands were shaking. This can't be. Rachel makes phone games in our parents' garage. No, Marcus corrected him, his voice calm but firm. Rachel built an AI engine that's about to redefine interactive entertainment. Those so-called phone games were a test bed, brilliantly disguised. I gently retrieved the contract and tucked it into my folder. Every time you laughed at my little games, I said, looking Darren in the eye, you gave me space to work without interference. I was never competing with you. I was building something you couldn't even imagine. The next hour was a whirlwind. Legal terminology flying across the room, Sony's team discussing transition timelines, equity splits, patent filings. I watched Darren and his partners grow paler by the minute. They'd spent years mocking my garage. Turns out, I'd been building an empire inside it. The partners had just watched what they thought was a failed solo project explode into a $250 million acquisition, right in their own conference room. As the Sony team packed up their things, Marcus turned to Darren. You know, he said with a calm smile, we usually prefer to host meetings like this at our own headquarters, but Rachel insisted we hold it here. Now I understand why. Darren couldn't meet his eyes. 3 years' worth of snide remarks, eye rolls, and smug dismissals collapsed around him like a house of cards. The aftermath, swift, and honestly pretty satisfying. News of the acquisition sent shockwaves through the gaming world. The forums lit up, tech blogs ran headlines, and industry veterans scrambled to understand how a mobile puzzle game had become the foundation of a gaming revolution. Even the very same investment partners who once laughed at my silly phone apps started emailing me, eager to talk about potential opportunities. Some even asked if I needed funding, as if I hadn't already built it all without them. I kept the garage in Brooklyn. Only now it's not a makeshift office. It's a private R&D lab, a place to keep refining the Orion engine. Sony's support and resources opened doors I could have never accessed alone. Dream Maze is now taught in university AI classes, and the expanded MMO version, Living Worlds, has changed how players think about online gaming entirely. Because in Living Worlds, every player truly experiences a game made just for them. The story unfolds in sync with their decisions, their emotions, their style. The NPCs remember, the world responds. It's not just personalized, it's alive. Darren, to his credit, eventually emailed me a long, heartfelt apology. He acknowledged the years of belittling and said he was humbled by how wrong he'd been. He even asked if I'd be interested in speaking at his firm's tech innovation seminar. I politely declined. I was too busy leading Sony's AI gaming division. But last week I got an email that hit differently. A young woman, 21 years old, working from her parents' garage in St. Louis, had developed a unique AI gaming prototype. Her family thought it was just hobby programming. She asked for advice. I thought about that old garage in Brooklyn, the all-nighters, the silence, the doubt, the joy of being underestimated. I hired her on the spot. Today, that garage is empty. Sony recreated it down to the exact scuff marks and chipped paint in their Tokyo headquarters. They call it the lab that changed everything. But I kept one piece from the original. A worn whiteboard with a single line scrawled in marker. Let them underestimate you. That message stayed untouched from day one. I never erased it. The gaming industry will never be the same, neither will my family. At the last holiday gathering, Darren stood quietly nearby while his teenage son showed me his game prototype. Darren didn't say much, just nodded, supportive, respectful. He'd learned the hard way what judgment can cost. As for me, I'm still making games. They're just not as simple as everyone thought. The Orion engine keeps growing. It learns, adapts, evolves, just like the people who dared to build it. And every time someone dismisses a developer working from a dusty garage, I smile. Because sometimes the biggest revolutions start in the smallest spaces. And sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking this road with me. I was just a woman in her 30s building something revolutionary in a Brooklyn garage while the world dismissed me as a hobbyist with big dreams and no backing. But dreams, when fed with grit and belief, become reality. So if my story resonated with you, if you've ever been laughed at, underestimated, or told to be realistic, leave a comment below. Share your story. Tell me about the idea you've been afraid to chase, or the project you're building in silence. I read them, I really do, and every message reminds me why I kept going when no one believed in me. Support comes in many forms. It's a comment, a like, sharing this with someone who needs to hear it. If you believe in what I built, if you see the value in innovation that starts in unlikely places, stand with me. We're not just changing games. We're changing how people view creators, visionaries, underdogs. And here's my advice. Never let someone else's limited imagination define your potential. Keep building, keep dreaming, and never apologize for thinking bigger than the room you're standing in. Because sometimes the smallest garages hold the world's greatest revolutions. I never wanted their approval. At least, that's what I told myself as I stood in my corner